Would like to call to order the March 7th Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. I'd like to start with a roll call.
Byrd,
Here.
Cooper, here. Gilmore, here. Gleason,
Here.
Hodges,
Present.
Holloway,
Here.
Johnson R. Here. Kiefer,
Here.
Lord, Nolan,
Nolan here.
Yep, sorry. Ogleton, Patel, Rasso Adela, Rasso Allen, Wills.
And we do have a quorum.
Thank you all so much. Next order of business, are there any citizens with CAC business to present to the CAC? Seeing none, I'll move to go to a review and approval of minutes for the February 7th, 2023 meeting. I just had one thing, it says 2023 on the agenda.
Just realizing, the minutes you have in your packet are correct. The agenda you have in your packet is from last year because I copied and pasted forward from last year. So the correct date for the minutes was February 6th of 2023, and the minutes that are actually in your packet are correct.
Thank you for the clarification, Heather.
And today is March 6th, yes. So everything else is pretty accurate except the financial report. We still, as we mentioned last month, HUD has still not given us our clearance to start, which means our finance department hasn't been able to balance our month. We were told Friday that it would be this week. HUD told us this week we would be able to do that. So we are very, very hopeful that we'll be able to get you year to date by the next CAC meeting, and our apologies for the delay. We're kind of the middleman in this process, so sorry about that.
I appreciate the staff letting us know about that. We know you guys are doing the best you can do. The minutes have been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Next is the review and acceptance of the financial report through November.
And that is, we don't have that. That will be, hopefully next month, we will have it all the way up through current, but we're still waiting for HUD to give us the clearance to be able to click the buttons we need to click in our federal reporting system. So we won't have that. That's an incorrect agenda item.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next, we will have an action item of the year, CDBG allocation recommendations.
Okay. So you have a number of pieces of paper in front of you, which I know we have a number of new members and it will be confusing. So I want to start with, you have a letter-sized piece of paper with some pie charts on it that's printed in color. And so if we could go over that together, I think it might help clarify where we're at. So you all have spent the last few months reviewing applications, viewing the presentations last month from our applicants, and making some decisions regarding what your personal scores were going to be for each of those applicants. So you each went through all of the applications, and you could score each application up to 100 points. And so now you handed them in to us a week or so ago, and we total those up. So we total those up from all of you, and in theory, that first square there, we have 15 CAC members who scored. This example is for public services because there are two separate categories, but for public services, there were 8 applications. So we have 15 separate CAC members who scored 8 separate agencies that applied, and each of those applications could have received 100 points if they'd all gotten a perfect score. So in theory, the total amount of points that's available in the public service category is 12,000. If every single CAC member had scored every single application perfectly, 12,000 points would have been awarded. However, if you go on to step 2 there, never does it happen that every single agency is scored perfectly by every single CAC member. Some of them, might get 90 out of 100, some of them might get 60 out of 100, but very few agencies get perfect scores from even one CAC member, let alone perfect scores across the board from all the CAC members. It just doesn't happen. So if we think about all those 12,000 points that could be awarded as a pie, most of that pie is going to get awarded. Most of those points are going to get awarded. But because not everybody gets a perfect score from everyone, there's going to be some points of the pie that are not awarded. And that is the dotted line section there of the first pie chart you see. And that's simply because everyone doesn't receive perfect scores from everyone. Now, if we think of that pie of points, and there's an equivalent pie of dollars. So there's 12,000 points available, and there's a pie of dollars available for the public service category. And this year, we estimate it's going to be $270,000 that's available in that public service category. And so because not all the points were awarded, the formula won't award all the dollars. The formula goes through and it awards an equivalent amount of dollars equal to the equivalent amount of points that each application received. And since not everyone received a perfect score, that means there's points left over, and that means as a result there's dollars left over. But HUD doesn't allow us to leave dollars on the table. We have to award all of the money that we are granted. We have to tell HUD what we're going to do with it. And so what happens then is the formula goes back through the applicants and it ranks them from highest scoring to lowest scoring. And it goes through a process of awarding those extra points to all of the applications in order from the highest to the lowest. So in theory, the highest score gets the biggest chunk of the leftover points, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller pieces of that dotted pie until all the points are awarded. Once the points run out, that means the dollars have run out, and that is the end of the formula process. So that's kind of the way the formula works. But what I would like to say is that the formula is a recommendation. So a number of years ago, the CAC got together and decided they wanted a little bit more structure to how they were handling the scores. And so, but it is a group of 15 people with 15 divergent opinions, and the formula is only a recommendation. So the formula takes the combined scores of all of you CAC members and combines them into what the formula would recommend if you were following the formula perfectly. But when you come together on allocation night, such as tonight, you can go through, we go through the applications, we score them, or we discuss them one by one. And then if there's a discussion that one of the agencies is not awarded enough money or one of the agencies is awarded too much money, you can discuss that. And the CAC does have the opportunity to make changes to the formula recommended amount. You have to make a motion. That motion needs to identify the agency you're planning to take money from, because to give any agency more money, you have to take from somebody else. So you have to identify in your motion which agency you're taking money from, which agency you're going to award that money to, and the reason for the change. And then there's discussion of that motion, and the CAC would need to pass that motion with a 2/3 majority vote. So the formula can be overridden. There's a process for it, but it requires a 2/3 majority vote and a specific format for your motion. And that's simply because, as we said, HUD requires that we award all of the money. So there's no separate pot of money to award from. You would have to decrease one agency to increase someone else. Any questions about that so far? I know we have new people, so I want to make sure that I spend the time on it. Now, as I mentioned, this pie chart example here is an example from the public service category. So as you may recall, there are two categories of funds in the CDBG grant. There's the public service category. Those are the applications for the youth programs, the senior programs, the transportation programs, domestic violence, all of those kind of service-based entities, HUD defines them as public services, and that category is capped by HUD. So HUD says that we can only award 15% of our annual grant plus 15% of any public program income that we might expect to earn into that category. So we've gone through and we've made an estimate, and we estimate that that's $270,000 for the upcoming year. Separate from that is the non-public service category. So that is not program-based. That is actually physical improvements to things or financial loans and grants. So that would be our housing programs, our infrastructure programs, and our economic development programs, as well as the grant administration. That's a non-public service category itself. And so whatever it is that can't be awarded in public services has to be awarded in non-public services. It's always the most competitive discussions about the public services, which is the smallest amount of money that we have. And that has been a decision the CAC has made year in and year out, is to fund that public service category to the max that's allowed before funding anything else. And so the formula that you will see tonight reflects that past desire, which even that CAC can override if they would want to. If they would want to award less money, the CAC could direct us to alter the formula. But since that hasn't happened, at least since I've been here, the formula just kind of presumes that we're gonna start with the highest level of funding, and then, again, you can make changes if you choose. So that is kind of the two kind of categories that we have to address tonight. So this is the way the formula works, but I want to direct your attention, if I could, to, it's a letter size. It looks just like the scoring sheet that you filled out, a grid, but it has the total scores. So this is just for your information. It shows the total scores that each applicant received combined from all of you. It's not in any score order, it's just alphabetical, more or less. And so that shows you, just so you have a record of how many points did each agency receive in total. Looking at the public service category, you can see we have a spread from the high is about 924, and it looks like the low this year is about 850. So we have about 75-point spread between the high and the low scores in that category. So, so this is just kind of, if you want to see what the actual point score totals were, that form will show you. Now, if you will look at the legal-sized piece of paper, so this is that sample form allocation, formula allocation that I talked about. Before we do anything else, let's look at the very, very top of the sheet, and you can see it says year 49 total CDBG available is $1,611,691. So I can proudly tell you, for only the third time since I've worked for the city, which has been 13 years, we actually have our grant amount at the time of allocation. So this is a rare thing, bask in it while it lasts, because probably next year, Congress will not pass the budget on time and we'll go back to the way it has been in the past. But in a usual year, we, as the CAC, you go through this process of allocation based on an estimate. But I can tell you this year, we do have our actual grant amount, so that's a nice treat. So that enables us to calculate with a little more certainty what our public service category is going to be, and that's where we came up with that $270,000. So just so that you know, the grant this year, 1.6 million, is down about $22,000 from last year, so it is a reduction from last year, modest though it may be. It is actually a reduction. So that means that where we stand now is from the highest year of CDBG funding, which was 2002, we're down 28% from that year. So just in case you're interested to know, it is a slight reduction. And that means as a result, the public service category is a slight reduction as well. In the year that we're in currently, we have them funded at 275, and we did have to reduce that a little bit because we can't keep them at the same level when the grant has gone down. So, but it's, you know, small relative to the whole pot of money. So hopefully that won't cause too many troubles for anybody. And then the other part of the money you see there is the 1.3, and that is again just the total grant amount minus what we're putting aside for public services, and that's what's available for the non-public services, which are that top section with the planning and admin staff, the rehab staff, and the economic development and housing programs. So down the bottom are those public services again. So this is an example of how the formula goes through and calculates. Because we have scored applications for all of the public services, the formula can give you a calculated formula for the public service category. So I can do this on the screen, or I can do it on the paper. You might be able to see it better on the paper. But let's go walk across the public service category just so I can kind of tell you how the formula sort of works. So the first category is the request. That's how much money each applicant asked for. The second column is percent of all points received. And you can see now the applicants are in order from highest to lowest. So the applicant that scored the highest and got the greatest percent of the points is Project Renewal. The applicant that scored the lowest and got the fewest percentage of points is Salvation Army. So the first pass of the formula is that it's going through and it is awarding each applicant a slice of that pie in equivalent to the points that they received. So you can see Project Renewal received 20,790 in that first pass, and down the bottom, Salvation Army received 19,125. So you may look at that and think that's not a huge, spread, $1,500 or so between the top and bottom scorers, but their points, weren't that far apart. They're pretty closely grouped, so we would expect to see that. But you can see down the bottom, there's 160,000 awarded through that pass, and we have 270,000 available in the public service category. So there are unawarded dollars in this first pass through, and those have to be awarded. The formula will go ahead and award those in highest to lowest for the applicants. And so you can see in the next column, the additional funds awarded. That's the total that the formula would recommend adding, and that comes from a couple different places, and I'll show you on the screen, but it's easier to just talk you through it first. And you can see there's some variability here. So the higher amounts might be because they have requested a higher amount. So some of these became capped because we can't award more money than is actually was requested. So if you see Friendly House, they kind of are a little bit of an outlier. They didn't get quite as much extra money, and that's because they didn't request as much money. So they actually got capped out at their request. That was the only one this year, at least based on the formula recommendation, that reached their capped amount. Everybody else would be high enough to have absorbed it. So you can see then that second pass through awarded 109,889, which combined with the first pass of 160 equals the total of 270 in the last, or the second to last column there. And that the last column with dollar amounts there, starting with 38,477, that is what the formula would recommend the funding amount be for the public service applicants as you go down. And then the last column is CAC members voting no funding. Several years ago, the CAC wanted us to add to the score sheets that column off to the far right that said, do you think this agency should be funded? Because there was a feeling at the time that since the formula presumed funding, there was no place to really express that there should be no funding. And so that's why those boxes were added. And that would be totaled up here on the score sheet for you for your review on allocation night. But I can tell you that this year, nobody checked no on any of the applicants, so they're all zeros. So that's kind of like the first intro to how the public services category is scored in the formula. Now, the top section is the non-public services, and it's a little different. So the top section, if you recall from when you scored, we had the CDBG admin category and the rehab staff and supplies category. And those are not scored the same way as other applications are. And that is because there really isn't a way to score them on the same application on the same footing. And so some years ago, the CAC had decided that an application would still be submitted, but it wouldn't be scored in the same way as the public service applicants are, just because they're just so different. And instead, on allocation night, the CAC will discuss and vote on a recommended allocation kind of before beginning the rest of the non-public service category. So that's why you don't see estimated or recommended amounts in that top category, is because until the CAC makes the vote on the admin categories and the staff and supplies, the formula can't calculate it. It needs to have those inputs first. So that's why you don't see them at the top. But we did want you to see everybody side by side and what their scores were. So any questions about this summary page before we begin?
I just got one at the very top here. It says year 49.
Yep.
Where is that figure at?
The year 49 total CDBG, that's the 1.611.
Yeah.
That's the total. And then the total for non-public service is 1,341,691. That's right to the right of it. And then the public service to the right is 270. So 270 plus 1.341 equals the 1.611. Okay, yeah, it goes kind of horizontally. It can be a little disorienting. Oh, sorry. Maybe I'll flip it for next year. Okay, so any questions on that?
So had Friendly House requested more, they would have gotten more?
Well, in their initial pass, so looking at this, Friendly House, their initial pass through, they received 20,340. So their initial award wouldn't have changed based on what they requested. But the additional funds, I believe, and we'll see it when we go to the on-screen version, there were a few $100s they would have received that was above their request, but they couldn't receive because their request was lower than what the second or third pass required. So that did require an adjustment. And and just for historic, I know we have newer members and ones that have been around a few years. We never tell the agencies can choose to request whatever they would like. If they would like it higher or lower, that's their decision. The formula doesn't take into account the amount of their request, except that it will cap it. We can't award more than it. But it's not like the formula is based upon the idea that they should get at least 80% of what they requested or anything like that. And there was discussion of that back when the formula was first established, and the kind of decision was that if there was a funding scenario that was based upon what they requested, it would just only encourage inflated requests. And so the decision at that time was made to kind of have the formula operate independent of the requests, except that we can't award more than they request, if that makes sense. Okay? All right. So, yes. Sorry, and for you, those of you at the table, we're sorry, we have a very full house tonight, but we put you there because we thought then you could swivel and see everything. Hold on, let me turn your mic on because this is being recorded, so we want to make sure your thoughts are recorded for posterity.
Okay, thank you. I guess my question, and you're gonna laugh at me when I talk about it, is the discretionary points.
Yes.
Where I seem to have a problem myself every year. And so I'm just curious about when we talk about the total points, and this is the first year that I've ever really, I guess, thought about this, but when you say that there's 12,000 available, because theoretically, we could all score them all perfectly, but really we can't. So
Yeah.
there's really not actually 12,000 points available. available.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the percentage of all the points received, is that really fair? Because we're giving out more, you know what I mean?
I think there's no perfect solution to that problem. I know, I don't remember, I don't think it was you, but someone did bring that up in the past. Maybe it was Jim Hepner when he was on here still. It's a tough math problem because in theory, everyone could get a perfect score. I mean, each individual has the opportunity to get a perfect score, but they won't all because there aren't enough points. So I think we can look at how that plays next year, but in terms of how the formula works, I don't think it would make a difference because to the extent that the pie is inflated, it's inflated by the same amount for everyone, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So I don't think it would make a huge difference, but we can look at it. Can you help me remember for
That's
next
what I
year?
was thinking. Would it
Yeah.
really make that much of a difference?
I don't think, math-wise, I don't think it would because, you know, I think as long as they're all basing off the same percentage, like, now, for example, we could get in the weeds, and I don't want to confuse everyone, but if we were figuring percent off of, as if I could get the 5 points and you didn't, then you would each be figuring off a different size of pie, and I'm not quite sure. I'd have to think about how that would play out in the formula, but we can look at it for next year, because this isn't the first time the question has come up. We just haven't revisited it in a while. So we can look at that. But I don't think, in terms of how the formula flows, I don't think it would make a significant difference.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we are getting ready to begin the allocation process. Just to remind all the CAC members, during this process, it's very important that as we're voting, that we make sure that we are either raise our hand or push the talk button to be recognized, as we have to follow the rules very closely from this point on. So first, we would like to make a motion to see whether or not we would like to address either the public service or the non-public service first. I entertain a motion for that. Mr. Kiefer.
Make a motion to address the public services first.
Mr. Oberton?
I would like to second that motion.
The motion has been moved and seconded, and all our votes will be roll call votes as well. So,
Byrd,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Yes.
Gleason,
Yes.
Hodges, Holloway,
yes.
Johnson R.,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Obleton,
Yes.
Rasso Adela, Rasso Allen,
Yes.
Wills.
Yes.
That motion is carries.
Okay.
Okay.
So Heather, would you like to provide any more information about the public service
Yes.
section?
So now we have the actual spreadsheet on the screen, showing all of the steps, not condensed as it was on your printout. And let me see if I can make this just a smidge bigger for you all. Sorry, I wish I could make it better. So again, it's showing some of the same information. So they're ranked in order from highest scoring to lowest scoring. You can see the requests there. On the left, you can see the percents are displayed the same as they are in writing, and the dollars equivalent to point earned. So that's that kind of first pass through. But this does show the intervening steps, and I just want to cover them just so that there's full transparency. The first column here, do I have a pointer? I feel so limited without a pointer. But I don't know if there is one in this drawer. Nope. Okay. This column, if you can see me wiggling, is a column that goes through and it awards the highest percentage of the leftover points to the highest scoring applicants. So the top scoring gets 8%, 7%, 6%, 5, 4, 3, 2, all the way down to 1% of what's left over. So after that pass, if you look down here at the bottom, we still had 70,000 and change left over. So the decision of the CAC was that whatever is left over after that first pass should be divided equally among the applicants. So when you divide it equally, it counts out to $8,791. So each applicant gets $8,791, except there was $1 left over, so that goes to the highest scoring applicant, the extra dollar. If there's, because of rounding, if there's $1 left over, it goes to the highest scoring. If there's $1 short, it comes off the lowest scoring. It's just how the formula goes. So, so this way, you can see down here at the bottom, that awards all 270,000. There's no money left over. But, so that means this would be the total, this column J here, this would be the total of all of their award. However, now the formula has to go back through and make an adjustment to see if there's anybody who was awarded more than what they requested. And you can see the only one who has a negative amount is Friendly House. Their calculated award would have been $35,724, but they only requested $35,000. So they were reduced by $724, and that $724 was divided more or less equally amongst the other 7 applicants in the category, except that it resulted in $4 left, giving everybody 104 means we awarded 4 too many dollars. So those 4 extra dollars came off of the lowest scoring applicant down here at the bottom. So with that adjustment, the total calculated award is displayed here. And remember, this is a formula recommendation. This is not written in stone. The CAC traditionally would go through one by one. The chair would, kind of call out the top one and say, is there anyone with any discussion on this one? And keep moving until we've gone through them all. If you would like to make a motion to make any changes to this, remember that it's kind of a zero-sum game. All $270,000 in the category have been awarded. So in order to increase anybody's awarded amount, you will have to decrease someone's awarded amount. So the standard for that is you make the motion that says who you're going to decrease, who you're going to increase, and by how and why, the reason. And then the CAC would vote on that motion, and it would require a 2/3 majority vote to make that change. So the only other thing I will say about the public service category is you can vote to remove money from the public service category, but you cannot vote to take money out of non-public service and move it into public service, because we have estimated we are at the max for the cap. So you can always take money out of public service, but you can't add any in. So those are kind of the rules that surround the voting. But with that, the CAC, I'm going to scroll it over so you only see the numbers displayed here. And I will stand ready to do any calculations you would like to see as you go through your discussions.
Thank you, Heather. Project renewal is currently funded at $38,477. Are there any adjustments that the CAC members would like to make concerning project renewal? Seeing none, I'll move to the, Overton. Sorry.
For the sake of saving time, my question is, can we make a motion that will approve all of the public service as a package, or do we have to keep going through each one individually?
It would be the CAC's decision. It'll be a roll call vote. And if the motion would carry, then you could approve them as a slate. If the motion didn't carry, then you would go back to discussing them one by one, would be my suggestion.
Can I make that motion then?
So the motion is to approve the public service as a
As a
complete
package.
slate.
Yes.
I second it.
Roll call. Any discussion? I'm sorry.
If we have nays, we're gonna go through it. Or is it gonna be majority rule?
Is it a 2/3 vote
This would be a simple majority, but, I mean, do provide time for discussion of the merits of the motion before you vote, and perhaps there's, you know, reasons that, if anyone would like to make their case that they would like to go through one by one, this would be the time to do it, I would say.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
Sorry, I just wanted to be clear.
Okay. There is no more discussion?
Cooper,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Yes.
Gleason,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Holloway,
Yes.
Johnson R,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Obleton,
Yes.
Rasso Adela,
Yes.
Rasso Allen,
Yes.
Wills,
Yes.
Bird.
Yes.
Your motion carries.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve them all as a slate. We,
The text of the motion was, that's what we just did, is that correct? Yes. Yeah,
we did to vote. We have to, so the first vote was to approve them all as a slate. Now it is whether or not we want to approve them all as a slate. Is that correct?
do you want to read back the text of the motion as you understood it, Dawn?
To approve all of the public services as a package.
That's, and I believe that's the motion that
so we're
we,
good.
yeah,
Okay, so we're good. Okay,
so I think we're good on that one.
great. Thank you for the clarification. And now we will move to the non-public service. Are there any discussion?
I'm sorry. I'm confused.
Yes,
Okay, so we just voted on whether or not to vote as a whole or not, but we didn't vote to approve. Did we?
the text of Joseph,
To approve.
yeah,
as well.
I believe that was Joseph's motion
Okay,
to skip straight to the approval of the slate. Is that a correct characterization, Joseph?
Yes.
Okay.
okay. I thought it had to be two separate.
Oh,
votes, but that's
sorry. Is everyone comfortable with that? I just want to, okay. Like, and then we'll be sure to read back the text of the motions before the vote, just to eliminate any possible confusion.
Well, I appreciate staff work on this. There was a little
Yes,
fuzziness, but I think we're all clear now.
okay.
So,
If there's discomfort, we can redo,
Yeah.
but we will be, we'll read them back verbatim, just so that everyone is clear
thank you so much.
as we're doing it. That was I should have done that, so I apologize on that.
Great. Now, are there any discussion on the non-public services? Joseph?
I would like to make the same motion on the non-public service.
Sorry. If I may.
Yes, please.
So the first step in the non-public service category is that there would need to be an affirmative vote on how much to award to the planning and admin category and the rehab staff and supplies category. So the formula can't calculate the program dollar amounts until those votes have been taken. So that would be the first step there, and then the slate would exist to be voted on after that point.
Kiefer?
So I'd make a motion to approve the requested amount for the planning and admin and the housing rehab staff and supplies.
second.
Seconded by Johnson.
Do you have it?
Gilmore?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you give us an approximation of the budget for planning administration for all of these? So, I mean, are we,
That's available in that category? Is that what you're saying?
no, well, just the, so, okay, we're, for planning admin, they requested 306,000. Now, if their budget's 35 million, well, then 306 isn't much, but if their budget's 306, that's a lot.
So the departmental budget for our entire department, altogether is around 2 million. 2 point, I don't want to say a decimal because I can't remember. It's in excess of 2 million. But that would include all of our federal and non-federal programs altogether. Does that get to where you're looking at?
Well, I mean, then the request is 1.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I see what you're saying.
so we're funding 1.7 of the 2 point whatever?
So almost all that we do in our department is federal. There really isn't much, there isn't, other than we get about 600,000 for DREAM, which is non-federal, but virtually every other dollar into our department is for federal programming. That's, at this stage in the game, about all that we do. So it would make sense to me that the federal dollars would be a big chunk of that because there isn't much outside of that.
Okay, and then the same question about Economic Development Fund and housing, is that?
So there are no, other than the DREAM funds coming in, the DREAM CIP, which is our non-federal portion of our DREAM program, there are no other dollars coming into our department that aren't federal. And for economic development, the application would reflect, CDBG pays 20% of the staff, 20% of 2 staff positions each to handle the federal portion of the economic development program. But then they don't have any other grant and loan programs that they operate, but they do business retention and attraction and they have non-federal funding for their salaries for that. But they don't have any other funds going out the door in terms of assistance other than federal funding in the economic development category.
No, I just thought we were doing the planning and administration, the motion. We shouldn't be on.
So there was a.
Sorry. There is a question. Is there a second to Kiefer's?
Yes, I think Reagan seconded.
Reagan, okay.
So we have to approve as presented for admin / planning and housing rehabilitation staff / supplies. And
If I may clarify, to approve as requested
as requested.
is the motion on the floor.
Gilmore,
So if, as a point of clarification, if we approve the first and second line, the third and fourth line are automatic.
Well, the formula will calculate a recommendation, but they are not, just as in the public service category, the recommendations are only recommendations, so they can be overridden. But the formula will calculate a suggested funding amount that can be overridden.
But, okay, if you have 2 organizations to give money to, and you have $3, and you give $2 to the first one, guess what? The second one gets $1, or vice versa.
Right.
So by approving the first planning and admin and housing rehab, then that automatically.
It determines the funding available for the remaining 2. Yeah, if that's the question. So right now there's 1.341, so 1,341,000 and change available in that category. And once dollar amounts are awarded to the first 2 lines, then the remainder, whatever that is, will become available to the remaining 2 lines.
Okay, I personally don't like that.
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is that, what I see is that, okay, the non-public service total, according to the top of the page, is 1.3 million. Okay, so if we give 600,000 to the first one, that's only gonna leave 700,000 out of the 1 point whatever that they ordered, that they requested.
Did you want me to do the math, or?
Well, I would like it to be closer to I guess what I'm saying is that if we give the first group 75% of what they request, we give the second group 75% of what they request. To me, that's more fair and equitable, but I'll go along with.
Is there any more discussion? I mean, there's a motion on the floor. Yeah. Any more discussion?
And I guess that he brought it up, so basically, they're requesting for almost 400,000 more than what's available.
Is that correct?
Um,
If non-PS available is 1.3, but they're actually requesting almost 1.7.
Yes, and I would say that's also true in the public service category, because just as we talked about in public service, we don't put a limit on what agencies can request.
So what Dale's saying is if we give the first two what they need, then essentially the one that's requesting the most, which is 800,000, they're not even gonna come close to what they asked. Correct?
I would say, yes, that's correct. I would say that,
Well, I mean, yeah, so 400,000 is gonna come from the third and the fourth. If we give 100% of what they're requesting.
And there is a significant balance. Isn't there already in housing rehab?
so I would say, keeping in mind the structure that HUD has laid out for us, which is there is a grant allocation announced, and all of that money has to be awarded. I would say historically, it wouldn't be unusual for one applicant in the non-public service categories or the other to request, I would call it a larger than expected dollar amount, so that the formula doesn't result in there being money left on the table. So, because HUD requires that we have to award it. So I would say, speaking as somebody who prepared that application in the past, though I did not prepare the application this year, I wouldn't say it was out of the ordinary for one application to be much larger like that. The other thing I would keep in mind is that, as you say, there's a pretty significant balance that we carry, because the housing rehab, remember that the housing rehab, neighborhood redevelopment fund, and the economic development funds are revolving loan funds. So once money goes into them, the money stays in them.
Yes.
And so that money gets loaned out and comes back in the form of program income, which gets loaned out again and comes back. So those specific two applications, the housing rehab and neighborhood revitalization fund and the economic development fund, unlike any other applicant on this page, they have the opportunity to access program income that will be coming in throughout the year, which is payments earned on grants and loans that they've made out in the past. So the funding that is awarded here tonight is not the entirety of the funding that's available to them, because HUD regulations require the program income go to them if they earned it. So if that is helpful at all in a feeling of shortfall, there is other money coming into those funds because HUD requires that other money come into those funds, the revolving loan fund.
Thank you for the clarification. We have Kiefer.
So we're still on the motion, though, of approving the
Yes.
planning admin, and I think we're
Yes.
getting off track here.
Agree.
Because we can,
Yes, we are
we're
on that
gonna
motion.
go
I agree
reback,
with that.
we can revisit this. This is the money that's needed to basically run these programs, so I mean, that's my thought.
Thank you. Next, we have Byrd.
Just for clarification, did some quick math. Would the 250,000 from the City Economic Development Fund, would that also follow the same rules of capping at the request as the
It would.
public services? Okay, so based on that, the number for the housing rehab would be right in the neighborhood of $442,000. That would be approved out of the 800, just for math for everyone.
Thank you. Oberlin.
Question on
Jason, could
procedure.
you- there you go.
Did we, first of all, did we start the voting?
We have none.
Okay, so we need to finish the voting before we handle anything
Yes.
else. Thanks.
Is there any more discussion? All right.
Oh, Adela, that's okay.
Adele.
I just want to mention really quick that even though it might seem like a lot, and I can see why some questions come up,
That's okay, I got it on now. Mhm.
We need to keep in mind that, you know, these positions need to be paid, you know, we need to staff these people to run this program, so keep that in mind when we're voting. Because without those positions, nothing else will happen.
The summary of our conversation is that these positions need to be funded. That's what we're voting on.
To be able to run the program.
Yes. Okay, any more discussion? If not,
Gilmore,
No.
Gleason,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Holloway,
yes.
Johnson R.,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Obleton,
Yes.
Rasso Adela,
Yes.
Rasso Allen,
Yes.
Wills,
Yes.
Bird,
Yes.
Cooper.
Yes.
Yep, and that motion carries.
Next is I'll entertain a motion for the housing rehabilitation staff, supplies, and program operational costs.
Was that included?
We had it to approve as requested. The motion was to approve as requested the admin/planning, and then the housing rehabilitation staff/supplies, which was then going to move us on, I think, to the next.
Yep, I'm plugging them in. Okay, so to demonstrate where we are with things, so once the calculation was made on the last vote, similar to just down below, the formula awards dollars from the highest to the lowest scoring. So housing rehab was scored a little bit higher than economic development. So it each got its piece of the pie. But as you can see, the difference in that first pass was not huge, and that is because the points were only a few points off, less than 10. And so as a result, that first pass through didn't result in a huge difference in the dollar amount. It's the second pass, which is that funding from top to bottom, that resulted in a larger chunk of money going to the housing rehab program. And because that program did not become fully funded, that reached 513, 544, and the economic development program remained with its allocated amount based on the points only, which was 179, 212. But I do remind you that these can be amended. So the process would be to go through and discuss those two. And if there is a feeling that there should be some change, you would make a motion, have just identifying which agency it will be coming from, which agency it will be going to, and the reason, and then have a 2/3 majority vote to pass that motion. Or accept them as they are. Those would be the choices.
Go ahead.
I just simply have a question. So in moving, if hypothetically, moving money around can come out of any one of the 4 pots there?
Yes.
Okay.
I entertain any motions?
How can it come out of the 4 pots we already approved? What the first two, the planning admin and the housing are getting?
So while it hasn't happened in recent history, I mean, any of the calculated amounts would be subject to the 2/3 majority vote. So if somebody wanted to propose a motion, they could, but it would be subject to whether or not it would pass. I don't recall that it's happened in the past, but there's nothing in the rules that would prohibit it that I can think of.
Overton?
If I'm looking at this right, then we have the 2 categories that are left, which is the housing rehab and city economic development. Is there any other ones that I'm missing? That we haven't agreed on anything? So those are the only two that are left. Okay. Then I would like to make a motion that the two are taken as a package and approved as a package.
Would it be accurate to say you're proposing that they are approved as calculated?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, approved as calculated as a package.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
So I have that we will approve as calculated as a package, the ED fund and the housing rehab fund. Okay.
Yes.
Gleason,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Holloway,
Yes.
Johnson R,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Obleton,
Yes.
Rasso Adela,
Yes.
Rasso Allen,
Yes.
Wills,
Yes.
Bird,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Gilmore.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, so with no changes, the recommended awards are displayed there on the screen. And that would be the full slate as voted on in both the public service and the non-public service category. I would remind, oops, I don't know what's happening with my cursor here. That the one remaining item that has not been voted upon, so the economic development staff is funded in part from their program income. So the CAC has requested in the past that they be able to vote on the use of that program income towards staff costs. And so in the application, it was reflected that the portion of program income that are estimated to go towards staff costs for the upcoming year is listed there at the bottom, 53,971. So that would be a vote, a simple majority vote that would be needed to approve or disapprove the use of program income towards that salaried sub-cost.
I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Was that you, Reagan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second by Hodges.
Hodges?
Any discussion? Obleton.
I was just looking for where the total was that she was talking about, 5349.
It is in a couple different places. One is on the screen there at the very bottom. But it is also displayed,
Number 2.
if you look at this one, the allocation summary, that's like a portrait oriented. At the very bottom of that sheet too is listed.
Down there. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any more discussion? No?
Hodges, voting on the ability for the economic development staff to use their program income as requested in their application. Hodges,
Yes.
Holloway,
Yes.
Johnson R,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Obleton,
Yes.
Rasso Adela, Rasso Allen,
Yes.
Wills,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Yes.
Gleason,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Are there any other business before the CAC? Overton?
I,
Is there something that you're supposed to do, or is this lower
Joseph.
or higher?
yes.
than what we expected?
So there are two remaining votes that will be needed. One is kind of the final opportunity to approve, and that would be to approve the full slate as displayed upon the screen. So just kind of to wrap up the both sides of it, since we kind of deal with public services on one screen and non-public services on another, just to display them all in one place and vote on the full slate. And that would be a simple majority roll call vote. And then, as Joseph pointed out, we do have, the last vote is typically, so in a normal year, HUD will not have announced our allocation when we have this meeting. So we would normally be doing this allocation based on an estimate. And so what we would do is have a motion that would approve staff to make across the board changes of plus or minus 15% if the actual grant amount varied from what the estimate was. So even though we are operating on an actual dollar amount announced by HUD, I would still recommend that we still do that plus or minus 15% language, and that is because in 2 of the last 5 grant years, HUD has later come back and recalculated the award and given us a different dollar amount after they've announced it. So they've miscalculated the award in 2 out of 5 years. So even though we have the rare opportunity to be voting on actual dollar amounts tonight, I do still think it would be prudent to have the plus or minus. And all that would do, just so that the new members would know, is if the actual grant varied and it went up by 3%, then across the board, all of the applicants would go up by 3%. If it went down by 3%, across the board, they would all go down. And staff would just be empowered to make that change without calling a special meeting of the CAC to have you all vote on all this again. So those would be the 2 votes that we would still be needing here tonight.
So the first vote is to approve it all as a complete slate. So entertain a motion, Kiefer.
Yes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the complete slate, both public and non-public.
Is there a second?
I second it. Nolan.
No. Any discussion? Good.
Great. Thank you. Yep, so we have the motion to approve the full slate. That would be non-public service and public service. So Holloway,
Yes.
Johnson R.,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Obleton,
Yes.
Rasso Adela, Rasso Allen,
Yes.
Wills,
Yes.
Byrd,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Yes.
Gleason,
Yes.
Hodges. Yep, motion carries.
Heather?
So thank you for that. So then the next and final motion would be, if you check the motion sheet, the number 4 motion here on the motion sheet would be to approve language that would approve staff to make across-the-board increases or decreases up to 15% is our recommended number. In the event that HUD make changes to our grant award going forward.
I entertain a motion.
I second it. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I move to make the motion for this to recommend contingency language for allocations.
Thank you, Nolan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Johnson.
So the motion would be to allow contingency language for staff to adjust up or down 15%.
Yes.
Johnson R.,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Nolan,
Yes.
Obleton,
Yes.
Rasso Adela,
Yes.
Rasso Ellen,
Yes.
Wills,
Yes.
Bird,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Gilmore,
Yes.
Gleason,
Yes.
Hodges,
Yes.
Holloway.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Is there any other business for the CAC tonight?
From staff, I would first of all just thank you for your time and attention. Hard to believe this allocation cycle has been going on since November. So it's the main responsibility of the CAC, and it's very encouraging that you all take it so seriously. So from a staff perspective, thank you very much for the time and attention, because we know we are very lucky with our board that we have such good engagement. The recommendations that you've made here tonight are recommendations to the City Council. So the City Council will have the final decision on that, and that will be in the second cycle. So that would be, whoops, I have my dates here. Just have to locate it. Oh, there it is. I'm surprised Mr. Gilmore didn't jump in and tell me what my dates are before I could find them.
The second cycle in March?
Yeah, the second cycle in March. It's March 15th and March 22nd. So it will go before Committee of the Whole on the 15th, at which there'll be a public hearing and the City Council will vote, and then they will advance it to the City Council, full City Council meeting on the 22nd. So we may be approaching you if you have some time as our chair. We often ask our chair to come to the public hearing and speak on behalf of the recommendations from the CAC. We've been very fortunate the last, 10 years, I would say. I think because of the formula and because of the diligence of the group, the City Council has not found reason to amend or change the CAC recommendations in the past 10 years or so, but has historically happened. So I think things have changed quite a bit and tightened up quite a bit, and as a result, the City Council has a lot of faith in what you all do here. So there's that. And then the other item I would say is watch your email. Our members of our staff in our office are planning an event for National Community Development Week in April. So we do often have a tour or another event, and CAC are welcome to attend that and encouraged if you're able. It's usually a good time, and you can see some of our projects, and we invite elected officials and media along too. So it's a great way to support the grants if you have the time and opportunity, but if you don't, that's fine. And also, not so many of you can come that we have a quorum, because that would be an illegal meeting. So you are all welcome to come, but no more than 8 of you. Or no more than 7 of you, I'm sorry. So yes, determine who you will send if you would like to send someone. So those are our 2 other items of business. The other thing I will say is we will meet again in April to kind of recap this allocation process, and if there would be recommendations you would make for the future or changes you would like to discuss to the application or the scoring process or anything of that nature, an April meeting would be a great time to talk those things over. So I think from a staff, Dawn, do you have anything? Okay, I think that's all from us tonight.
Thank you. Heather and Don, I think just speaking, I don't want to speak for the whole CAC, but you all have been extremely patient and with us and answering all of our questions. It's a lot of complicated information. A lot of people have a lot of questions, but you answer each of our questions fully and completely, and that means a lot. as being a member of this committee. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's our pleasure. It really is. We look forward to this meeting on every month we do.
Awesome.
We
All
do.
right.
No, it's fun. We talk about it. We just did. We're like, there's such a great group to work with. I mean, I've been here a few years now. There've been times when I haven't looked forward as much. So,
A motion to adjourn?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
motion was Will's, second was
Gilmore.
Gilmore.
All right. All those,
No, that's.
all those in favor?
Majority.
Say. All those opposed? Thank you. This concludes the March 6th CAC meeting. I'm like, I'm just trying to read.